At 10:50 local time, an Iranian Navy helicopter closed in on the USS Fitzgerald with the explicit task of compelling the American destroyer to alter course. A move meant to demonstrate Tehran's continued dominance over these seas. What followed made clear that Iran's sharp rhetoric could inflict more embarrassment than its Cold War-era hardware. Inside the destroyer's Combat Information Center, American sailors stared at their surveillance radar displays with equal parts amusement and incredulity. The most sophisticated naval radar ever constructed, built to track ballistic missiles in exo-atmospheric flight, was now monitoring what was essentially an airborne relic trying to menace a 10,000-ton warship. The Iranian helicopter in question had a concise set of objectives: collect intelligence on U.S. naval maneuvers, force the Fitzgerald to alter its heading so Tehran could claim control of the area, and manufacture a propaganda win to salve the humiliation of having its nuclear infrastructure pulverized by B-2 strikes. This is an old play from the 1980s Tanker War Handbook. Employ cheap, expendable platforms to pester larger ships in the hope of provoking a disproportionate response. But this is not 1987. And the Fitzgerald is not a defenseless commercial tanker. Fitzgerald embodies the reasons the U.S. Navy remains the undisputed master of the seas. This Arleigh Burke-class destroyer fields 90 vertical launch cells bristling with missiles capable of reaching beyond 90 nautical miles. Its 4 gas turbines deliver roughly 100,000 shaft horsepower, pushing the vessel past 30 knots. At its core, the Aegis combat system can simultaneously track in excess of 100 contacts while queuing dozens of missiles toward their assigned targets. The ship's computers labeled the aircraft track 0341, and the threat library promptly matched it to an export variant of a 1970s anti-submarine platform. Threat priority, negligible. The processor had already computed 47 separate engagement solutions across available weapon sets. In a combat scenario, this decision cycle would close in 30 seconds. Surveillance locks the contact, fire control illuminator paints the target, an SM-2 fires, and the helicopter becomes aluminum debris. And yet, this pinnacle of modern American naval engineering was being shadowed by a helicopter Tehran originally purchased from the U.S. before the Islamic Revolution, dating back to an era when disco dominated the airwaves. Its APN-130 Doppler radar, tech traceable to the Vietnam conflict, was broadcasting its location to every American sensor within a 200-meter radius. The Fitzgerald's SLQ-32 electronic warfare suite began logging every emission from the inbound aircraft. Consider it a digital fingerprinting system for hostile electronics. Frequency, pulse repetition interval, signal amplitude. Each parameter is recorded to form a unique electromagnetic signature for that specific airframe. It's akin to making a voice print for later identification. Every radar burst, each radio call, even the helicopter's navigational beacons are archived into a threat library. That catalog is turned into electronic warfare ammunition. Next time U.S. forces meet this helicopter type, their jammers will know precisely which bands to deny, which signals to spoof, and how to blind its sensors. What demands 60 seconds of analysis today becomes instantaneous recognition tomorrow. In effect, the Iranians were teaching their adversary how to defeat them, one emitted pulse at a time. Inside the cockpit, the Iranian crew battled aging hardware as much as the elements. The cyclic stick thumped with worn rotor bearings that ought to have been replaced decades ago. Warning annunciators danced on the instrument panel. Many lamps had been disconnected because spares have been unavailable since the regime change. The pilot glanced at the fuel indicator and did the arithmetic. Given current consumption while fighting headwinds and attempting to match the destroyer's speed, they had perhaps 45 minutes on station before turning back. That is, assuming both engines stayed alive. The Aegis computer had already outlined 47 distinct methods to neutralize the helicopter using SM-2 surface-to-air interceptors. Each missile costs far more than the helicopter itself, streaks at Mach 3.5, and can sustain 10G terminal maneuvers. The helicopter's top dash speed, in a dive, is roughly 140 knots. It's not merely a mismatch, it's outright farce. The Iranians, however, don't view it that way. Tehran has instructed them to confront the US warship to broadcast that the Arabian Gulf is their private paddling pool. So they send up a helicopter older than most of its crew, closing on a destroyer that could convert it into chum without so much as breaking a sweat. The radar operator calls the helicopter's inbound vector to the bridge. The officer of the deck answers with the same flat cadence used for reporting dolphins or floating debris. The close-in weapon system slews and tracks automatically, but it doesn't bother to elevate its barrels. Why would it? The weapon is built to kill supersonic threats. Chasing this subsonic relic is like using a supercomputer to play tic-tac-toe. As the helicopter closes to about 10 miles, the intelligence team perks up. Not from fear, but because it's a prime chance to refresh their threat libraries. It's Christmas morning for the information warfare officer. What the Iranians were about to learn was that getting close to an American destroyer was the easy bit. Remaining airborne would be the harder test. The Iranian pilot leans on the collective, driving the SH-3 toward the destroyer in what he intends as an aggressive attack profile. The bird plunges to roughly 500 feet above the swells. Its 1960s airframe creaks under the load. This is straight from the Iranian harassment textbook. Hug the sea to look menacing, make low passes to try to elicit a reaction, and use civilian bands to plead innocence if fired upon. The aim is to capture footage depicting the helicopter dominating a US warship, propaganda to claim control of the Gulf despite its nuclear program having been flattened. Through the scratched plexiglass windscreen, the pilot can see the USS Fitzgerald holding steady, not even altering speed. The destroyer's wake stirs the water astern. Just another routine day in the Gulf. American warship, you are approaching Iranian territorial waters. Change course immediately. The pilot's accented English slices through the radio static. American warship, you are approaching Iranian territorial waters. Change course immediately. The voice repeats, crackling over the carrier. Fitzgerald's comms team logs every syllable while stifling amusement. The destroyer had been operating in international waters all morning. Everyone aboard knows it. To needle them further, a female sailor is put on the radio to reply. Meanwhile, the intelligence collection opportunity is irresistible. The SLQ-32 kicks off a full-spectrum sweep of the helicopter's emissions. The Iranians are using civil aviation channels for their military chatter. No encryption, no frequency hopping, nothing that would stump a 1980s Radio Shack scanner. Every transmission is recorded and becomes part of a targeting database for future encounters. The operator logs exact frequencies: 121.5 MHz emergency, 243.0 MHz military emergency, and assorted VHF maritime channels. All captured, parsed, and stored. Next time an Iranian airframe transmits on those bands, US jammers will silence them in seconds. Via the wonder of Link 16, every American asset watches this farce unfold in real time. Think of Link 16 as a military WhatsApp. The same image shared instantly with everyone. The network runs on time division multiple access. Essentially, participants take microsecond slots to transmit, so nobody speaks over anyone else. Each node gets allocated time slots to send. All traffic is encrypted with NSA-approved crypto. Military-grade encryption so strong it would take every computer on Earth millennia to brute force one message. The NSA vets and certifies those algorithms to keep even America's most capable foes from eavesdropping. Gerald publishes Track 0341 to a cruiser 50 nautical miles away, the carrier 200 miles out, and to every surface, combatant and aircraft in between. Everyone sees the same track, the same firing solution, and the same authority to engage. If this escalated into real combat, that high-low would already be riddled like Swiss cheese in half a dozen different patterns. Inside the chopper, the crew chief watches the fuel needle plunge as if it were a lead weight. Trying to match a destroyer steaming at 30 knots is eating their reserves alarmingly fast. The port engine oil pressure indicator trembles in the caution band. Those General Electric T-58 power plants were superb in their heyday, each delivering about 1,400 horsepower fresh out of the factory. But that heyday fell in Lyndon Johnson's era. Now they gasp like a pensioner huffing up a stairwell. The Fitzgerald's bridge team treats the overflight like they would a passing gull. The Seawiz operator uses the encounter as practice for manual track acquisition. The fire control computer chews the inputs. At 500 feet slant range, an approach closure of 110 knots, crossing at roughly 30 degrees. The math is trivial. A 1.2-second burst, 94 rounds, a calculated 98% chance of catastrophic kill. The 20mm Gatling, an unleashed 45,000 rounds per minute. A tungsten curtain no helicopter can thread at 110 knots. It's akin to employing a minigun against a paper glider. The operator never even takes the unit out of standby. The destroyer's executive officer strolls into the Combat Information Center, CIC, to watch the intelligence windfall. "They really using plain voice comms," he says. The TAO, the officer on watch in the CIC, nods with a smirk. "Sir, I could tell you what he had for breakfast," the TAO says. "He's been kvetching about his wife's chicken curry on Channel 16. The XO, Fitzgerald's second-in-command, shakes his head. The Iranian bird swings by again, this pass from the stern. The pilot can see sailors on deck, continuing routine maintenance, heads down. One deckhand waves, the perfunctory wave you give sightseers. That slight stings more than any shell could. The Americans aren't sufficiently troubled to sound general quarters. The Fitzgerald's defensive suites remain on standby. Why drain power? The ship's combat architecture is built to absorb saturation strikes from dozens of high-speed missiles at once, while this lone subsonic chopper is coughing oil and leaving a smoke trail. It's like how the Mike Tyson versus Logan Paul matchup ideally should have ended. And unlike that spectacle, this bout isn't fixed. The Iranian pilot keys the mic again, his voice frayed with urgency. "This is your final warning. Change course, now." The plea carries the authority of a toddler resisting nap time. The Iranian intent is plain. Record warnings issued to U.S. warships. Assert that they defended sovereign waters. Manufacture propaganda to shore up morale after their forces were humiliated in a brief campaign. It's not genuine danger to the destroyer, it's content creation for state television. The Fitzgerald's bridge team ignores the transmission. They're occupied with navigation, executing a course change unrelated to the helicopter. The mismatch grows clearer once you grasp U.S. naval defensive doctrine. Fitzgerald works 3 concentric engagement rings. SM-2 interceptors extend roughly 90 miles for long-range kills. ESSM handles medium-range intercepts out to about 27 miles, while Seawiz provides close-in defense for the final mile. In a shooting war, that Iranian airframe couldn't even reach the outer ring. It's like trying to storm a fortress while you're stuck in the lot. Inside the SH-3, the grim truth is settling in. The fuel gauge reads roughly 800 pounds remaining, barely sufficient to return home if they break off. The port engine oil pressure has sagged into red, and temperatures are climbing. The helicopter is literally coming apart in the air. Held together by prayers and strips of tape, the crew chief pokes the pilot's shoulder and points at the instruments. The message is unmistakable. They must quit the area before they become the subject of a rescue sortie. The destroyer executes a routine navigational alteration, a scheduled correction toward the next waypoint. The Iranian pilot sees the turn and proclaims victory over the radio. The American warship is retreating. The mighty Islamic Republic has defended its seas. Back in the CIC, the intel team triple-checks their recordings. This will be comic material at the Ops Intel debrief.